Hi, it's Ricky of Moshville Times here once again. Now, tonight we have Cambridge-based melodic death metal band Akilla. If you like At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity, Insomnium, Amon Amarth, or Arch Enemy, then you will most definitely like Akilla. So I don't know how death metal reached Cambridge, but maybe these guys just dropped out of uni to form the band. We don't know, but we're going to find out. So we've got guitarist Dave with us then. So how are you doing, Dave? You're looking very
I'm
happy
good.
with things at the moment.
Yeah. Things are going well. I'm hungover, but all good.
So would you like to explain where you were yesterday? How did it go?
Yeah. So Akilla were on the outside stage at Colville Metal Invasion
Yep.
at the Victoria in Colville. I think we were on about 3 o'clock, and so we camped there and basically got absolutely smashed with Sheri from Red Death and Rob from Thrash 2 as well.
I know those two guys very, very well. I know that Sherry's in. No, is Sherry. Has she interviewed you guys? Yes, she has. She's
She
interviewed you
interviewed us
guys as well.
last night in a caravan, and we were so drunk that we don't remember doing it, but she's got a recording of it.
I'll need to ask her about this. She's actually doing a radio show tomorrow night. She's played you a lot on Moshville Radio. So she's done her bit to support the band. So,
Yeah,
but Rob Sutton of Thrasher 2 as well. He came up for a Winterfest for Moshville Thames last year. He's a character, funny guy, funny guy.
he's great.
Yeah. But before we start, I have to ask. See the riff in Cosmica, right? About halfway through the song, like when the tremolo bar is going to come in.
Yeah.
First of all, who done the guitar solo in Cosmica, and then but who done the riff underneath it? Because I was busy writing my questions, and I was
Yeah.
listening to the album in the background, and as soon as I heard that, I went, "Oh!" I had to stop. I had
The
to.
the solos 50-50, so a lot of the Akilla solos are both of us sort of trading off each other.
Yeah.
So the Cosmica solo, I think there's almost like three parts to it.
It's a nice bit when
Um,
the tremolo came in, but it's the riff underneath it as well. It's like,
the riff under the tremolo will be Ross, because I'm doing the tremolo picking. Um, and the solos kind of split into three parts.
yeah.
So the first part's Ross, the middle part's me, and then the end of it is Ross. So basically, in general, you can probably tell for either Elimination or Akilla songs, if there's sort of whammy bar abuse in there, it tends to be me as a rule of thumb.
So are you like Rick Ross school of guitar solos in Invader as
Um,
well? I think they use the tremolo bar a hell of a lot as well.
me, it depends on the song. So especially with Elimination stuff,
Yeah.
almost kind of two styles of solos in there. There's the much more melodic stuff, and then there's the noise. um, so the noise stuff is definitely sort of Dimebaggy, Kerry King type
Nice.
thing. Whereas the melodic stuff is probably more taking a bit of that wild in there. um,
Well, these are some guitar gods you're talking about here. So,
yeah.
but as soon as I heard it, it's definitely one of the highlights of the album for me. It just immediately made me stop everything, and I had around it and around it and around it. I was like, "Oh, that's good. That's good." But yeah, so when doing my research for this, I didn't really find a lot of interviews for the band. So I thought I would ask, since 101 other people haven't, how did Akilla come into being, and whose idea was it to form the band, and how easy or difficult for it was it to get the right members in?
So Akilla was formed in 2017, and I joined 2021.
Okay.
So Ross and Ginge more or less started it. They had a few other people sort of come and go. I joined 2021, and almost sort of a year later, bang on, Kath joined. it was about a year ago now.
Yeah.
I think that was the proper turning point for me and Kath covering a lot of the management side of stuff.
Yeah.
Frees up Ross and Ginge to focus a lot more on the musical stuff.
Yeah.
So for Akilla, the writing is probably like 80% of it's Ross.
Okay.
A lot of the time, the way the songs come out is Ross sort of writes a framework for it, normally on piano. Pretty much everything starts on piano.
Interesting.
Then he'll sort of like do almost a draft of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Normally on Guitar Pro. He'll send that over to everyone to sort of get a bit of a feel for it.
Does he send you at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, he's a nightmare. He he is basically AWOL all day, every day until I get in bed, and as my head hits the pillow, my phone just lights up with Ross being like, "Oh, I did a song. You should listen to it right now." I'm like, "I've got like 5:30." Yeah, that's normally sort of how the framework for the songs comes over. Ginge then spends a lot of time working on the drums. He'll do anything he can to make it different, basically.
Yeah.
Normally more difficult to play as well.
I was actually going to ask you how the songs are constructed in the studio later on, but we'll come back to that. But I know that Akilla wrote 2 singles. Were they released before you came into the band?
Yeah, so Cosmica and Echo were released 2019, I think.
I thought it was. I thought it was because I was wondering, because I know that both the singles are on the album, which we'll talk about in a wee second. Then, when you heard the songs, did you tweak them a wee bit? Did you add wee touches to the singles? So are they 2 different versions?
The single versions that were released aren't the same as the versions that are on the album. The main thing that got changed in both of them was I redid my bits on the solos in a bit more
tremolo bar.
That I think the main thing for any of the solos is making sure they fit the song. So I think the Echo one definitely, for me, like highlight of that song. Cosmica is more or less the same as it is on the single that was released yonks ago. But again, the solo just needed a bit of whammy bar abuse.
Well, that's something you'll be renowned for in this band. Then, as long as you've got your whammy bar, you're happy. But you've just released your debut album last month, The Gods Have Spoken. So how does it feel to finally release it after all the blood, sweat and tears that you guys have put into it?
Massive relief. It's been an absolute slog getting this album done. Because Ginge is actually the only one still in Cambridge now. Ross has moved to Lincoln.
Okay.
Me and Catherine Norwich. So there's no kind of easy way to just get together.
Yeah.
We see each other at gigs, and that's about it, really.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the album work was challenging just because of that
logistical stuff.
Kind of syncing up timelines was difficult, basically.
Yeah. Was some of the album already written before you 2 joined the band? You and Kath joined the band then?
Yeah, quite a lot of it was actually. All the songs had like the framework when Kath joined for definite. When I joined, some of them were a little bit more work in progress.
Yeah.
But the bones of them were mostly there, apart from Winds was one that I wrote, sent over to Ross for him to
tweak,
rewrite, basically.
Yeah.
So the chorus stayed, and the sort of main melody stayed, and then Ross kind of Akilla-fied the rest of it.
Yeah. So do you think you can kind of tell the difference from your songs to Ross's songs? Do you think there's wee subtle differences in there? Like, are you more harsher than what Ross is? Like, do you like the heavier stuff compared to Ross? Or are you the melodic one?
We've both got a really similar taste in what we like.
Yeah.
And I think because Ross essentially has that kind of stamp on all of the songs, that is what makes it consistent as a style.
Yeah.
So the song, like when I send over a song, it gets then Akilla-fied by Ross. So probably not, to be fair. You always have Ross's signature sound on everything, really.
So do you think then, because most of this album was written before you joined, are you going to have much more of an input on your next release then? Do you think?
Probably a little bit. It's the way that the songs come over. Is Ross will have the idea is already there, and then it's kind of tempering that. I play a lot with the structural stuff. I like making structures just not make sense. Which you definitely, that's probably one of the main things that carries over from Elimination to Akilla now. Is we'll never hear a song where it is verse, chorus, solo, chorus, done, ever. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that one. Thanks for that. But just got a simple question. Why was the album called The Gods Have Spoken? Now, I know it's a song in the album, but did you just feel, was it the best song in the album? Did you have a whole list of titles for the album and that's the one that you wanted? Or did somebody say it and went, that's it? How did you come to the album title?
When we were talking about what chooses the album title, the first thing we looked at was the song names that we already had.
Okay.
And which ones kind of summed up the collection of songs. So the initial conversation was basically, should we use a song title? If we do, which one? And The Gods was the one that fit best.
Yeah.
That was pretty much the logic behind it.
Yeah, I told you it was a simple question. But although this is your debut album, were the thoughts of it ever being like an EP on the back of the couple of singles that you've already released? Or was the chosen choice of release always going to be an album and get the name of Akilla out there?
That was a long decision.
Yeah.
So EPs have a really good use. I think if those two singles weren't already out, then we would have done an EP.
Okay.
That would have made a lot of sense. With having the songs already there, the costs behind a release, it makes it like it's just as expensive to get a CD pressed for an EP as it is an album. The only actual extra costs that you have are the recording costs.
Yeah.
The full PR stuff, it'll cost the same whether you're doing an EP or an album. So you might as well do an album if you've got the material there. In terms of those kind of costs, we were really lucky because Ross basically mixed the entire album, which saved us a fortune, like, more or less. We then sent over to Jack at DC Studios.
You're answering all my future questions. Just thought I'll let you know that. Yeah, you're pissing me off now. No, that's cool. I mean, I'll go. I do like kind of doing a deep dive. So we'll talk about the artwork. We'll talk about the mixing and mastering and all the rest of it. But that's cool. But it's an argument that I have with a lot of the interviews that I do. Like the older generation, like I speak to bands like Dog Tired, for example, from Edinburgh. They've just released their fifth album. Whereas the younger generation, like Portrayal of Ruin, for example, they'll do single, couple months single, just to keep the name out there. You just don't know which is the best way to do it.
works nicely. So I mean, we're already working on a follow-up single from off the back of the album. Having that both is essentially the way to do it if you can, because the single releases work really nicely for a lot of the streaming services. So Spotify will essentially reward you with the Spotify algorithm if you're doing a release every 3 months, because it's how they want it to work. Because it's kind of like a crack drip feed thing to try and sort of keep people engaged, I suppose. But you will never get as much traction from doing that as you will having an album that you can send to people. I think it's, especially as a first album, having something to say, this is who we are, here is a finished product, here it is. Whereas if you just release singles, you do end up with a kind of like, okay, but when's the album coming out?
Fair point. I mean, I do like the whole package, the lyrics, the artwork, the physical product and stuff like that. Online, it's just, you're just a click, and sometimes the attention span of people as well. They just see like Death Doom, they listen to Akilla or something like that, they listen to 6 seconds, no, I don't like that, and they instantly move on to another band. They instantly dismiss bands far too quickly. But hey-oh. So I think, is there 8 songs in the album or something?
Yeah, there's 8.
Yeah. So did you have any songs left over? Did you have 10, but you just went, these are the best 8? Or if you had 10, you would have released 10?
We were quite hard on ourselves in the writing process. So there was definitely a few discarded ideas.
Yeah.
But because of the way we write the songs, there wasn't any leftover like songs as such.
Yeah.
It was definitely like creating an album as a full release. And then sort of it was always written as this collection of songs is the album, because it kind of there is different bits in each song, and it covers a lot of ground in terms of essentially all our influences and sort of mashing them together.
Yeah. Did COVID also prevent things from happening quicker, or or I mean, you had your equipment in the house and stuff like that. Were you always constantly writing, or were you like, I'm sick of looking at the guitar just now, I'm just going to put it to the side, and you just got away from music for a wee while?
To be honest, COVID was when I was working on the Elimination album. So yes, but no. So like I did a lot of writing during the pandemic. Not much of it was for Akilla.
Yeah. So how does that affect your playing? Like, do you just sit down one night and say, right, I'm just going to focus on Akilla, or and then you play the rest riff, and you might, oh no, wait a minute, that would actually sound good in Elimination. Is it quite hard to keep them apart?
So Elimination playing E flat as a tuning, and Akilla playing drop C.
Okay.
So if I'm playing in drop C, it tends to be something that's going to be Akilla-ish. If I'm playing in E flat, it tends to be something that'll be Elimination-ish. So there's always that kind of distinction of, like, I've got different guitars for each band.
Yeah.
So I've got these all the time, basically. But I've got 2 that are set up for Elimination and 2 that are set up for Akilla. So the instant choice as to which one I'm playing comes from which guitar I pick up.
Yep.
The riffs and stuff, so sometimes it will be I'll write a thing with one band in mind, and then it kind of twists into something that might suit the other one better.
Yeah.
But more or less the writing for Elimination is done on a guitar, and then writing for Akilla is done on light notation.
Okay.
So a lot of eliminations what comes out when I pick up a guitar and just play around.
Yeah.
And Akilla tends to be, again, partly because it's bounced back and forwards between me and Ross quite a lot, and Ginge. The notation side of it is really important. Ross kind of writes vertically, where he'll look at, like me and Ross write completely different. Where I more or less have a thing in my head that I'll record, and that'll be the song. Whereas Ross looks at it a lot more technically in the notation, where he will literally have the notation for guitar 1, notation for guitar 2, notation for the bass, notation for the synths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he'll add in different notes to different sections, like almost kind of like orchestral style.
Yeah. I'd imagine there's a wee bit of a learning curve for you as to how he does things, but I take it there's no blood on the walls or fights in the studio or anything like that. Everybody gets on. Or is Ross quite hard to please? Or just be aware this has been recorded.
Diplomatic answer. No, in general, Ross is one of the easiest people I've ever worked with in that regard.
Yeah.
And him bounce off each other really nicely, writing, where it'll be, again, because we're doing it with those notation, it'll be he'll send something over to me, I'll change it, send it back to him, and he'll be like, "Oh, that was a cool idea," or "I didn't like that, I'll take it out." But I don't think there's ever been any kind of a right-based argument. Sometimes like it'll be one of us will send something over, and it'll be, I'm a bit precious about that bit, and that's the bit that'll more or less stay the same with some tweaks, and then anything else is game for just getting rewritten all the time. No one's got that much of an ego about it. Ross has managed to get very good at keeping his ego on stage.
Excellent. Excellent. But for those who haven't got a hold of the album yet, how would you say The Gods Have Spoken compares to the early material, and particularly the singles? Because I'd imagine, like, as we kind of touched a wee bit earlier, with new members coming into the band, they've added their personal touches to the songs as well. So do you think you found the sound that you've been looking for with this new material then?
Yeah, definitely. It's what we've been chasing our tails with for however long now.
Yeah.
I think the moment Kath joined, it was everything clicked in terms of it just ran smoothly and became.
So see, when Kath joined, did she bring more of the atmospheric elements? Because I think she does keyboards and Astork or something like that as well, doesn't she?
She used to do keyboards in Atork, yeah. The synth side of stuff comes from Ross more often than not. Kath's contribution is a lot more legacy. Like she'll do some stupid bass fills sometimes, and
Are you sometimes like, where the hell did you get that from?
No, because we live together, so I've heard it. I think she plays with her fingers as well, which surprises a lot of people, because a lot of the time for melodic, thrash, but any of the kind of more extreme genres, you're more or less just, the default is to play with a pick, and she's just much more comfortable playing with her fingers.
So she idolises Steve Harris and Cliff Burton and stuff like that. Cool.
Steve Harris definitely went to go see Maiden on Friday, so that was a good one.
Was it a night of the classics, or was it all recent stuff?
It was, what's the tour they're doing at the moment? It was basically, they do the older tour and then they do a newer tour.
Yeah.
Really, they kind of alternate them. So it was Days of Future Past tour. So a lot of it's off Somewhere Back in Time.
Yeah. Oh.
So there's a lot of Somewhere Back in Time, and it was mostly that and Senjutsu. Like there was a lot of the, I suppose the heavy hitters that you expect to be in a Maiden set weren't.
Yeah.
I'm cool with. I've seen like a million times, so it's actually kind of a nice change.
Yeah. Cool. But again, what I didn't know about the album, and we kind of touched on it a wee bit ago as well. Like, where was it recorded? Who produced, mixed, and mastered it for you then?
It was recorded all over the place. So we recorded the drums with Jack at DC Studios in Barnsley.
Okay.
Where does Jack live?
Barnsley.
Yeah, Barnsley. So Ginge went up to record the drums with him. They then got sent over to Ross,
Okay.
who basically made a template for the recording. Then me and Ross and Kath kind of filled in our parts. Ross then mixed it, and then it went back to Jack for mastering. So I've got like a home studio set up here. So I recorded my bits here and Kath's bits here. Ross recorded his bits at his home studio.
Yeah.
And all the drums were in Barnsley. So everywhere.
She's changed times now, but there's a lot of the DIY aesthetics, you know, like do it yourself. We've now got the capability to release albums from your own bedroom, like one man project. There's so many one man band projects that I play. But it can definitely work. I mean, if you've got a formula, then you just stick with it, don't you? So, I mean, you would love the budget to, I don't know, maybe get Dan Swano at Unisound to master it for you and things like that. But you might not have the pennies this time to do that. But who knows?
I mean, I've more or less done every release that I've worked on with Elimination and Akilla have been DIY. So we work with Dan at DC Sound Attack for a lot. So we're on his roster for PR bookings and management.
You must have sent me my bloody questions, because I'm going to ask you about him later on as well.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about him later. The DIY side of stuff is the way to do it at the moment for us.
Is it quite expensive for you as well, just to make sure that you've got the most up-to-date equipment, recording equipment? So you might not have the studio cost, but you might have...
Yes and no. So my studio gear that I've got here, the interface I've been using for about 5 years. I should probably upgrade it, but it works fine. The other thing that I use a lot is the Line 6 helixes.
Okay.
So I've got one for live and I've got one for the studio.
Okay.
Where one of them's just down there and it's rack mounted, and that just stays there, basically set up for recording at home whenever. And then I've got another one that's currently in the car, that is the geek group basically.
There you go. But is there anything about the way that you recorded The Gods Have Spoken that you will continue to use and have a settled formula? Or are you quite open to finding new studios, experiences? Or do you think you've now got the formula that you're happy with and will stick to it for now? Do you think you'll just do the same thing with the next release?
I don't know yet. We learned so much doing this album that yes, there is stuff that we'll do differently, but I think the core of we'll more or less record it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then Ross will probably mix it and we'll send it off for mastering after that.
Yeah.
I think that core method of recording is pretty much the way we'll do it. I can't see a situation where Akilla will go into a studio to record for 3 weeks and come out with a finished album. It's just not the way we do things.
I'm pretty sure your neighbours must love you then.
I live in the middle of a forest, so the squirrels love it.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So, just when we were talking off air, then, so with COVID and things like that, did it make you look at the more business side of the band? Like, have you and Kath, for example, taken up roles in the band that you didn't think that you would be doing, like the merch, the marketing, the social media, and all the rest of it?
So because of the way that Elimination runs,
Yep.
it made sense for me to almost do the exact same thing with Akilla, where I've got the contacts for, buying in merch, all that sort of stuff already. Yeah. And they're all sort of established relationships from working with Elimination. So it makes way more sense for me to go and talk to like Dave at Moomin or Adam at Cram and just be like, yeah, can you do this for us? Than everyone else being like, I don't know who these people are. I'm feeling really weird about it. So that kind of management side of things was always going to be me for Akilla because I'm already doing it for Elimination. And in terms of scheduling, having someone else in control of both diaries, which could then clash, would never work. Like we sort of tried it a little bit, and it was just a pain in the ass. So the easiest way to do it was more or less I do the management, bookings, and I suppose the business side of stuff.
Yeah.
For both, just because having it done separately for both bands just didn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Kath, I don't think ever expected to be in charge of socials. She loves it. Absolutely loves it. Doesn't complain about it whatsoever.
Funnily enough, she's wrote about that in the socials.
And again, because we're more or less doing the procurement for stuff.
Yeah,
we've been doing the posting out for the album. But for Elimination, someone else is in charge of that because I don't like doing it once, let alone doing it twice.
Duplication for duplication's sake. I hate duplication. But anyway, going back to the recording of the album, how was the recording for you? I mean, did it take you a good few goes before you were happy with the performance? Was there a song that you had to record over and over again? Was it over a couple of weekends? Was it straightforward? How was it for you?
For me specifically, in terms of Queen of Heaven was a nightmare. That song is an absolute bastard to play.
Was it a riff or was it the solo or?
It was the tappy bit. Show you.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah, so Queen of Heaven, the melody line in it is this.
Okay.
So the tapping side, I don't know if you can hear that properly or not.
No. It looked good.
Yeah. That bit, fine. That's more or less standard playing. The part after that is that.
Oh, you would make it more difficult for yourself. You're just trying to show off.
But for studio recording, everything has to be double tracked.
Yeah.
So all the lead lines, basically playing that twice and then matching that up exactly with itself, that took a long time. The solos and stuff were relatively easy because it's stuff I've been playing live for so long. I already know what the part is, what little sort of embellishments I want on it for the recording, and which version of it is going to be the album version. So solos were actually quite quick. Lead lines were mostly fine, apart from that one.
Did you give a big fuck yes once you completed it and you got it nailed down?
I got absolutely smashed that night. I mean, because there was a few where there's the kind of standard setup you have for recording an album of, go into a studio, you record it, that's it, done. What's there sticks and has to be used. Because of the way we were doing it, that wasn't necessarily true. So I think that bit that I just showed you, when we tracked it, it sounded great. But then when we put it in the mix, it didn't sound right.
Okay.
And there was a couple of pickup choices that meant that some stuff needed re-recording because a different pickup would have sounded better for that specific part.
Yeah.
And that bit I just showed you was one of those. I wasn't happy about that.
I have to ask you then, because when you were in your recording bit, you can just do it time and time and time again until you nailed it. How did you get on with it yesterday at the festival?
With what, sorry?
With that riff, with that melody that you showed me?
We didn't play that one because we had some tech issues that meant that we actually had to cut it. We were going to play it. Live is, I don't know why, playing it live is easier nearly all the time.
Nobody notices you making a mistake anyway. It's true.
I know, yeah.
You can feel Ross at the back of your, what are you doing?
It's that, and it's the double tracking that makes it harder.
Yeah.
And then for the rhythm parts, they're quad track normally. So we've got 4 tracks doing the same thing for the rhythm parts, 2 for leads, and the solos are the only part that's only played once.
Well, there you go. It's not straightforward, is it? Not straightforward. But talking about the visual side of the album as well, then, have you thought about doing a video release for any of the songs on the album? Now, I know that you released Serpent in the Sun, but that was about 4 or 5 months ago or something like that. But do you have any other plans for like a video release?
We have a video shoot in a month, which we might be doing 2 at the same time for.
Interesting.
We're not quite sure yet. I'm not sure how much I can tell you about all of that. Yes, there will be more videos, pretty much.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the setting? Like, is it going to be in the woods and you're going to have lights behind you and stuff like that?
It's literally, there's a forest there, so we're going to go and play around in the woods.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. But also with the visual side of the album, talking about the artwork for a second. So, who done the cover art for you?
Ross did it.
Did he?
Yeah, so he mixed it, recorded, did the artwork.
Right, okay. Because normally I ask, like, so how do you get in touch with artists? What do you send the artists? Do you send them the lyrics, the songs, and stuff like that? Or is it a thought that's in the head? Like, what do you think?
The concept was something I came up with yonks ago of more or less big statue-y thing, guy in front of it, and then some big architecture-y stuff around the sides.
Yeah.
And then I basically sketched it on a napkin, and Ross wasn't going to do it at first. We did speak to a couple of people,
Yeah,
but Ross then got in his head of like what he wanted for it, and because he can do it, he did. So
there's that DIY aesthetic again. So
yeah, and he's just annoyingly good at stuff.
Well, it's another talent. You've just got to push yourself, don't you? And it's a great cover, so fair play to him. But yeah, we've kind of talked about this. I was going to say, like, how are the songs constructed for the album? Are there the main songwriters to the songs, or did all members contribute? And how would you say you keep it all together, for example, when negotiating what stays in and what goes out of a song? Do you just have like a band vote? Or does Ross have the final say, for example?
In terms of what stays and goes, we're nearly always on the same track with it, and it's why having this lineup works really nicely is basically everyone just agrees and gets on with it, which is really nice. At the end of the day, unless everyone's happy with it, we don't tend to do it.
Yeah.
So
was there ever a moment where you had, this is the best riff I've written here, Ross? This, wait till you hear this, and he hears it and he went, nah, that's not Akilla. We're not using it.
That comes from Ginger anyway. Yeah, that happens sometimes. But it happens more often the other way around, where I'll write a thing with elimination in mind, and then it ends up being more Akilla-y.
Yeah.
It tends to be that way around more often, but it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah. So do you always have your two guitars close to you? So when you play a riff, you went, wait a minute, that sounds more like Akilla. Then you play up, you pick up your Akilla guitar, and you hear it on that, and you go, yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, you're on a desktop, so I can't show you, but there's basically a wall of guitars over there. There's about 20 kicking around.
I was going to say one for every day of the week, but you've got one for every day of the month.
Pretty much. I mean, some of them are basses and some of them are acoustics, which don't tend to get used that much. The basses do, but the acoustics don't.
Well, I hope you've got good house insurance, I'll give you that. But with Ross being the vocalist of the band, then, does he write all the lyrics for the album, or do other members of the band contribute to the lyrics? And what could you say that some of the lyrical themes are for the album?
So the lyrics, a lot of them were written by the old bassist.
Okay.
He had a lot of lyrics.
And he was perfectly fine for you guys to use them?
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the themes, in terms of like lyrical themes, they're all based around different myths and legends of different cultures.
Yeah.
I can't honestly remember what half of them are. Blood and Bone is nicknamed Aztec Terminator because it's about Aztec myths and stuff. A lot of them are sort of drawing on the Norse side of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's something we'll play around with quite a lot going forward.
Is that something that you can bring to the band as well, like going forward with Akilla and Elimination? Do you actually write lyrics yourself for songs?
Yeah. So I wrote most of the Winds of Winter lyrics.
Yeah.
And the last Elimination album, Disciples of the Beast, This Is War, and Infernal, I wrote all the lyrics for with a bit of Neil, and then the rest of them Neil wrote. So it's definitely something that for Akilla, like, I think that'll probably be most likely me and Ross playing around with vocals and lyric stuff and Elimination.
I was actually going to ask her now. I know that Ross is a main vocalist as well, but do you have to do vocals live, or would you actually do vocals on a recorded project album as well? Is it something? Because see live, I love seeing more than one vocalist. It just adds so much to a song.
It more often than not, it depends on the setup for the venue. If it's a massive venue, we tend to have 3 mics at the front.
Yeah.
Ross has got one, and then me and Catherine wirelesses.
Yeah.
So I'll sometimes go over this side and use the one over here, and sometimes use the one that's where my stuff is.
Yeah.
And then for smaller venues, just let Ross get on with it.
Yeah.
It does depend on the venue a little bit. More often than not, we do the 3 vocals at the front.
How do you find the multitasking, like playing the guitar at the same time?
It depends on which bit. So for Akilla, it tends to be harder because Ross is doing the vocals, he tends to have what you would class as the rhythm part more often than not, and I'm doing the lead part.
Yeah.
Which naturally is going to be harder to do vocals at the same time as.
Yeah.
Whereas with elimination, we kind of just move stuff around to whoever wants to do the vocal can do it. But yeah, the singing while you're playing thing is, at the end of the day, it all comes down to how we know the song.
Yeah. So maybe with your next release, then there might be more parts for you to come in.
Yeah.
Who knows? It depends what you construct, obviously, but I mean, it's just an idea.
I think there's never anything is off the table when we're writing. We'll just sort of go with that sounds cool, and if it works, then we'll do it. If it doesn't, we won't.
Yeah. So going back to the lyrics that you write, then do you read a lot of books? Do you watch a lot of documentaries, or do you open the door? You've always got a piece of paper and a pen on you, and you see something when you open your front door and you write it down and you go back to it later. What type of lyricist are you?
So it's very different between each band. For elimination, it tends to be beasts and Lovecrafty stuff,
knights and swords and stuff like that.
Yeah. Whereas with Akilla, it's more set around whatever the story that the song is based off of. And normally that is something that Ross will have in mind when he starts writing it.
Yeah.
So that theme is literally embedded in the song. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
So with Akilla, you're almost writing to a story, whereas Eliminations tends to be writing the story of like, this is some ridiculous beastie crap.
It's definitely a talent, though. It's definitely something that I couldn't do. It's not to be laughed at. But fair play. Thank you very much for that, David. I've only got a few more questions for you, so thank you very much for your time tonight. So who do you rehearse and who do you record your songs then? How often do you get together?
For Akilla?
Yes.
We don't. We have probably done about 4 practices with this lineup in a year. I think
so did you get together last week before the gig? Yesterday?
No, we had, I think Kath did 2 gigs and then a practice. For like the first practice that we did with her, it was very much like, can you learn these songs? And it was, yeah. So we tend to, Akilla practices tend to be quite focused on new stuff. So like there's a new song, we want to play through it before we play it live. Everything else is kind of ingrained. Where
so when you do meet, who do you meet?
It varies because everyone's so spread out. It tends to be Norwich or Lincoln, because both of us are here, and there's pretty good rehearsal spaces in Norwich. And I think Ross is in Louth, and there's 1 practice place, and there's a couple in Cambridge. I don't really know why we don't practice in Cambridge more, but I think for Ross, because it's basically a 4-hour drive for him whenever we practice.
Wow.
So we try and go up to Louth every now and again, just as so he doesn't have to drive it every single time.
Cool. Thank you. So, but now that the world has opened its doors and playing live again, so you talked about the festival that you played yesterday. What else do you have in store for us? Or like, have you had your album release show yet? Did you have one?
Got about 3. So for Akilla, we played in Iceland in April, which was amazing.
Wow.
Very much hoping to go back there next year.
So was that part of a festival, or did like a big band actually play?
We were headlining it. It was the Reykjavik Death Fest.
Wow.
But it wasn't the actual festival itself. They were doing like some warm-up gigs to kind of promote the festival, I suppose.
Yeah.
So they asked us to come over for one of them, and we headlined there. There's a video kicking around that I can send you that I think they put up a couple of weeks ago, where they basically said, "Do you want to eat some Icelandic food, and we'll film you while you eat it?" And it was disgusting.
It's not like that fish from Sweden, is it, in the tin?
Not that. No, not that. It was the first round was like chocolate licorice stuff, which is fine.
Yeah,
That's all right. Yeah, just a nice little palate cleanser.
Yeah.
The second one was dried fish skin with butter, which was like cardboard. Which, bear in mind, I don't like fish.
Neither do I.
Kath does. I managed to eat some of, and then they had to nearly put like a gag counter on the video because of how much she was going. And then the last thing was Greenland shark. If you haven't seen one of them, Google them because they look fucking hideous.
Yeah.
But I think because of the depth they live at, there's loads of ammonia in them, and if you eat it unprocessed, it's poisonous. What was it? Fermented. Yeah, it's fermented shark. And it comes on like a little cocktail stick with just like a little square, and it just tastes like piss jelly. It's fucking awful.
So Kath is lucky that you are alive today and talking.
She ate some of it too. She didn't. She put it in her mouth and spat it out. Ross. So Ginge didn't have to do it because he's veggie, so he was like, "I'm not eating that."
Yeah. Did you not suddenly turn vegetarian?
I very nearly did. Ross had a bit of it and was just sat there and like, "This is disgusting," but managed it fine. I chewed it about 4 times and was like, "No, I can't." And Kath just like licked it and then nearly threw up.
How long was the taste still in your mouth, no matter what you drank? Was it all still in your mouth?
I think Ross had it for, I think, about 2 days, didn't he?
I was going to say, Kath didn't kiss you for a week.
Just before we played as well. And I had it for a good 4 hours. Basically, so I got pissed that night. About 4 hours. 100% would not recommend.
No. Cool. So you've got Iceland. What have you got? So that's in the past then. What have you got going forward?
Oh yeah, I got completely sidetracked. We are heading to Germany for the first time in October.
Excellent.
There's a few others that I can't necessarily say about yet. We've got Sarcoma Fest.
Have you thought about driving across the Hadrian's Wall and coming into Scotland? Not that we'll let you in anyway. We're not going to let you in.
No, I'd love to do Scotland. I've actually never been to Scotland.
We'll definitely never let you in
now. No, we want to do Scotland. Yeah,
with Ireland
on the list. Do Scotland and Ireland. I don't know if we'll manage it this year, but if not, definitely want to do it next year.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm part of, like, I know a lot of death metal bands are up here because my radio show, I play death metal. And see just now, the old school death metal scene here in Scotland, the UK, Malediction are back, for example. It's incredible at the moment.
Kieran's new band,
Death Collector.
Christ, that's a good album.
Yes, yeah, he's a good boy.
Yeah, he's a legend.
We've got a festival on October the 7th. And Kieran's part of the team. You know, he done like the artwork for it and stuff like that. And he came up last year, and he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Great. A couple of things with him.
But it's good to see that you're on the road, and that you're going to places like Iceland and Germany. That'll be one hell of a. So what's the thing in Germany? What is it, part of a festival again?
Yeah, so Germany is
it
in Eternum, which is spelled A-E Eternum. And I can't remember who else on that bill, but it's really good. Fimbulvet and and a couple of others, and then I think there's going to be more announcements soon on it.
Yeah.
That's actually on the 7th of October.
So when you're going to play this set in Germany, then are you going to play for 30 or 40 minutes in?
I think it's 45. I don't know yet.
Are you? Because I'm now going to ask you, out of the album that's been released then, and you're playing your 45-minute set, what's the one song particularly that you're looking forward to playing the most? Like if it's number 5 on the set list, I cannot wait for this one. It's my personal favourite because of the solo in it. Or what's the one that you're looking most forward to playing?
Blood and Bone at the moment. Blood and Bone has been kind of like a dark horse for us. When we were demoing the album, I didn't realise how much we liked it. And it wasn't until a couple of months ago when we started doing it live more regularly and people had heard it on the album that we just started enjoying doing it more and more. And it's definitely one of the most fun ones to play.
Did you leave that towards the end of the set then? Or is that one of the first ones that you would play?
It's normally sort of around them. So basically we always finish on Echo as a closing song at the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the set, it's pretty fluid, but we tend to have Winds of Winter or Cosmica as an opener.
Yeah.
But I think we're playing around with the idea of maybe opening with Blood and Bone. Song of the Seafarers is always fun as well.
Yeah.
Had a couple of rowing pits for that, which is bizarre.
Good.
Iceland guys got well into it.
Listen, it must be the best feeling in the world when you're just up on stage playing your tunes and people react like that, you know. It must be the best feeling in the world. But since Kath can hear the interview, then she can shout out her song that she's looking forward to playing the most. I don't know whether it's got a bass solo in it that you particularly like, or what's your favourite song?
Oh, I think it's Blood and Bone. It's just really...
She was actually out of the room when I answered that. But yeah, I think it's pretty much Blood and Bone for everyone, isn't it?
I like Gods as well. I've got a nice bass bit in Gods.
Yes, Gods Have Spoken. That's definitely one of your
I like the
fun
bass bit in
ones.
the middle. It's really nice.
Cool. It's just a wee question that I like to throw in there. But you've been recently signed to the growing DC Sound Attack for a while now. So how did that come about? How's the relationship been so far? And what do you hope Dan Carter or DC's Sound Attack will do to Akilla?
I've been working with Dan for ages. So I think the way that me and Dan started working together was a recommendation from Kath like years ago, because she was working with him for Atalk.
Yeah.
And then I started working with him for Elimination, and then that just kind of carried over to Akilla as well. It made a lot of sense. He's been doing a lot of stuff for us for a long time.
So what are the type of things that he does for you? Like if you're doing, if you've got a lot of contacts yourself and Kath is doing the social media type things, what side of things does Dan do for you?
It fills in a lot of the gaps, and he works on the PR campaigns for the releases themselves.
Yeah.
So all the review send outs, everything like that. That's like a huge blind spot for me. So it's really helpful having Dan being able to just send stuff like that out, press releases, all that side of things.
Yeah.
Him and the rest of the DC guys are great at bookings. It's something that I do quite a lot of myself because of covering Elimination and Akilla. It makes sense for me to be doing that. But they're really good to be able to talk to. If I've got a gap that I can't fill, then they can every time, basically.
Yeah.
He's got a really good network in Germany as well, which has worked very well for Elimination, looking at streaming numbers and stuff like that. Then Elimination tends to do really well in Germany. I think that's partly off the back of Dan's side of stuff.
Yeah, fair play, fair play. I've spoken to him a couple of times. I've interviewed him as well. He's a nice guy. He owes me several pints, but he's never went into his wallet.
Always owes people several pints.
Yeah, he never goes into his wallet to get. I think he's Scottish actually. He keeps forgetting his wallet, you know. But anyway, right. Thanks for that. I've only got like a couple of questions left for you. I really do appreciate your time. So I was wondering if you can share the different ways that The Gods Have Spoken is going to be released and who by. Now, I know that you're an independent band, but have you sent it to labels who have maybe shown interest, or are there some things that you can't discuss?
There's a couple of things probably can't talk about yet.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gone everywhere. Yeah, it's been out for a while now. So
where could we get it then? Where could people that are listening to this and want to find more about Akilla and listen to your music, where could they purchase the album from?
We have our own web store, which is, what's the website address? Akilla web store. Akilla web store.
Big Cartel.
Yeah, Big Cartel. I'll send you a link for it.
I've got it. That's how I knew.
Oh, perfect. It's also on every streaming thing ever.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. So we put it up on YouTube on release day.
Yeah.
Racked up like 10,000 views in the last month.
I saw that.
Great.
I saw that. It was. I think it was over 11,000 when I saw it.
Yeah, I think it hit 11.
And you're getting a lot of positive comments as well. A lot of good feedback.
Comments have been really nice.
Yeah. But I mean, CDs, yes, but tapes and vinyl are making such a comeback. I mean, I know a guy who owns a record label and he's doing the cassettes and stuff like that, and they're just going. You know, people are being nostalgic and just remembering the good old days. And back, in fact, I got that one in. Got that one in yesterday. It's a Edinburgh-based blackened death metal band, but I played them on my radio show. They had 4 likes on Facebook, Finag, and nobody had heard of them before. But when I played their track, it led to Kendall from Brainbath releasing the album on tape, and so was that proud moment.
Yeah, I think we're really hoping to do a vinyl release. We did it with the last Elimination album, and it's just expensive as fuck, basically, at the end of the day.
It's not just that, it's the time that you have to wait to get it before it can be released, you know. You probably have to send them the album to them last year to get it out now, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think we probably will do a vinyl release a little bit down the line. Yeah. But it's something that we want to get like bang on. Like, I love having like opening it out and having all the artwork and everything like that.
That's up.
And it's a lot of work to get that kind of thing just like perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got some stuff in the pipeline with that kind of thing. Yeah.
Good. Delighted to hear it. But this is the last question for you, and it's probably going to start another 40-minute conversation, because we're going to talk about the instruments that you use to record the album. Right. So you've already explained that you've got 20-odd guitars. So which of the 20-odd guitars did you use? Did you use one for the riff and one for the solo? Or was it all the one guitar?
Yeah. They're actually still in the car because I haven't unloaded the car after Colville yet. So this one is been on everything I've ever released. I bought this guitar about 15 years ago now. It was my first like proper grown-up guitar, I suppose.
It's funny how you've got 20 guitars, but you just go back to the first one that you've ever bought.
This one is just like a consistency thing where this gets the exact rhythm sound that I want out of a rhythm sound.
Yeah. What's the make and model?
This one is an Ibanez RGA 720 QM. So the QM's quilt maple, so that's because it's got a quilt maple top.
Yeah.
The RGA is basically it's an RG shape, which is like the sort of standard super strat shape.
Yeah.
But it's actually got an arched top like a Les Paul on it.
Nice.
And I think when I got it, it came with like some stock Ibanez pickups because it's not like one of the sort of ridiculously expensive high-end guitars. I think it's about 500 quid.
Yeah.
And it varies depending on manufacturer, but what you get a lot of the time with that is they'll put essentially the money into the build itself,
Yeah.
and kind of skimp on the electrics a bit. So the stock pickups weren't amazing. And then I swapped them out to an EMG 81 and a 60. And the 81 is basically the rhythm tone for everything, and the 60 is just a really, really nice clean tone.
It's a 6 string, isn't it? Not a 7.
This is 6 string, yeah.
Yeah. So what pedals and what's your amps and stuff like that? Are you the geek of the band? Do you have like 40 different pedals?
I am the collector, 100%. So Ross has, I think, about 4 different guitars. He has his ESP-V that he uses live for everything, that he used for the entire Akilla album for everything he did, I think. He's also got a Les Paul kicking around. What else has he got?
I have no idea.
He's got a 7-string that he used for Elimination when he did filled in for us at Bloodstock.
Yeah.
And he's also got a couple of acoustics kicking around.
So the Ibanez that you showed us there, if you're going on a week-long tour or something like that, do you take a backup? What's the backup guitar that you take?
So that Ibanez is a recording guitar that doesn't get used live.
Yeah.
Basically because I'm using Floyd's all the time and whammy bar abuse, you got to have a backup. So the Elimination ones. This is a Jackson RR24 from about 2007. These are getting quite rare now, and they were really sought after. It's only got 1 pickup, and got a Floyd. So if you break a string on Floyd, it's fucked. You've got to restring the whole guitar. You can't get away with I snapped a string, I'll carry on for the rest of the song because it knocks all the other strings out of tune.
Yeah.
So yes, I will always have a backup guitar at every gig ever.
Is that something you do a lot when you're playing gigs? Then you break your strings. That's why you've always got a backup.
Not recently, but I had a run. It must have been about a year ago, where I think it was about 5 weeks, where I was doing a gig with either Elimination or Akilla every weekend, 5 weeks in a row. And I think there was one of those weeks where I didn't snap a string. But that hasn't happened since then. And the other thing is, now we've spoken about it, guaranteed next time I'm playing guitar, I'll snap a string.
Well, see, when that happens, you let me know and I will laugh.
But yeah, I've always got a backup kicking around.
So what are your pedals?
I run through Line 6 Helix for everything.
Yeah.
So I used to be like an amp nerd. And you get like 2 kind of schools of thought of there is people who are like, I have to have an amp, I want an amp, never doing a gig without an amp. And then you've got the digital nerds who will just literally just rock up with a Helix and be like, I have 7,000 amps in this one box. But it doesn't quite tickle your balls in the same way as running through a cab.
Yeah.
But for ease, I just use the Helix all the time. Out the front, it sounds the same, if not better. It's really easy for sound guys to just plug it in and then you go. You don't have to piss around with like making sure you got the right ohmage on the cab for the right head and stuff like that. It literally just plug it in and go, and it means that normally we can set up in like 10 minutes, if that.
Yeah, we're all DI.
Everything's DI. So I mean, Kath's got Podgo that's got like a little wireless built into it.
Yeah.
So her side of things is literally just plug in, go. Ross has got the same with a what's he got? Pod HD. That again, you just give it to some guy and be like, here you go, one lead, everything's done. And they're like, I love you. Apart from yesterday where Ross's stuff wasn't working.
I would get rid of him. I would kick him out of the band.
We can get anything done.
But on that happy note, I thank you very much for your time, David. And Kath, I know that you're not on camera, but you did shout out some very valid points, and I liked how you hurled abuse at David. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's been really good.
Yeah, no problems at all. No problems at all. So I know that Sheri plays you on a radio show on a Monday night, but I'll do my bit on a Thursday night and I'll play you. So that's a question I'll ask you then. If you want me to play one song on Thursday night, then what will it be?
What do you want?
Blood.
Yeah, Blood and Bone.
I will play that on Thursday night for you then. So I'll get this written up. I'll continue to play on the radio. I'll get the article written up. I'll go on Moshville Times socials. I'll go on all of my socials and stuff like that, Twitter, Instagram, and all the rest of that nonsense. And we'll certainly do our bit to spread the word of Akilla.
Nice.
Sheri's on my team as well, so we'll do our bit to spread the word. And when you're ready with things with elimination, you can get somebody else to interview you. But thank you very much for your time, man.
No worries. Thank you so much.